For this second lesson in the chapter on inheritance, we're going to look at another example of inheriting from a base class. This time we're going to work with employees and managers. So we're going to call this employee.py. So we'll begin by building the employee class, which will be our base class. So the first thing we do is create a constructor. So our fields are going to be name and pay rate. Next, we'll define a toString method, which will just display the name and the employee's pay rate. Then we'll define a pay method that simply returns the pay rate times the hours worked, which is the parameter or argument for the method. So very quickly, let's build an employee object. We'll create an employee named John Jones. His pay rate is $10 an hour. And then we'll print out his pay for 40 weeks. Let's do that in a better statement than that. Gross pay. And then we'll have to put that into a string. So we'll do that. Okay, so let's just make sure the employee class works before we move on. Oh, it's always something. Let's take a look here. Do we have one too many parentheses, perhaps? The problem was we left off the trailing double quote. All right, let's try it again. Instead of E1, that should be self. That's very obvious. That's a rookie mistake. Let's try it again. All right, so no, it's not wrong. It's E1.pay. So we're just taking a look to see if we can find where the problem is. I don't see a problem. Let's try it again. All right, now I see where the problem is. Every method has to have self as the first argument. It's one of the few languages, the only language that I know of that works like that, so it's very easy for me to make a mistake, but there we go. So John Jones makes $10 an hour, and for 40 hours in a work week, he gets paid $400 gross pay. So that's correct. Let's move on. So now we want to derive a manager class from the employee class. So to do that, we write class manager, and then in parentheses, we write employee. So the first step is to create our constructor. A manager has the same fields as an employee, and they also have a new field, is salaried, which lets us know how to pay a manager. So the first thing we do is call the base class constructor with the two arguments that it needs, name and pay rate, and of course self. Then we'll set a field named salaried to the isSalaried parameter from the constructor. You can tell by the name of the parameter that it's a true-false value. That's not by default, that's just a convention. After that, we'll build a toString method. We'll create a return string, which will consist of a call to the base class toString method, and then concatenate to that a call to the isSalaried field, just like so. And then return the return string. And then last but not least, we define pay, the pay method for a manager. And here we write an if statement that says if the manager is salaried, return simply their pay rate. Else, if they're not salaried, then they must be hourly. Then return self pay rate, and that needs to be self above too. And we'll fix that before we move on. Right up here, like so. Okay. So we'll create a new manager object, M1, Jane Smith, 1200, true. We'll display M1's toString method. Then we'll pay M1. We're going to borrow this print statement and just change E1 to M1. And actually, let's take that out. Then let's create another manager object. Use M2's toString method. Then we'll borrow the gross pay method again. So what should happen for M1, Jane Smith, her pay rate should be $1,200 because that's her salary. Then for Jim Brown, because his salary is set to false, we should see $800 for gross pay. So let's save that. Go back to our command prompt, clear the screen, and then run the code. So we have another little typo someplace. Oh, is salaried is our parameter, and salaried is the field name. Very simple mistake. Save that. Clear the screen. Try it again. Almost made it. Let's take a look at our pay method for managers. That's where I thought the problem was. Forgot to put self there. All right. Let's try it again. Gross pay none. Interesting. So let's see what happened with gross pay none. I left out the return statement, or the return part of the return statement. Another simple little mistake, but again, I leave these in because these are the kind of mistakes you'll make. Try it one more time. We'll leave it like it is. And there's our $800 gross pay for Jim Brown. So to summarize, a derived class can inherit fields and methods from the base class, as we see with how manager inherits name and pay rate. And then we can add fields that we need, such as salaried, to the manager class. And then we can also redefine a method from the base class to specialize it for the derived class, which we did with pay. So that wraps up this second lesson on inheritance, and now we're ready to move to the first exercise for the chapter.